Welcome to Chapter 1 for Family Therapy. This is a brief introduction to the course and the textbook. Some questions that I want to pose to you that we will be discussing more in the discussion board is, do we need family therapy? Why do we need it? Why did it develop into its own discipline where we have licensed mastered family therapist, and what factors or what are the factors that helped it to grow? So if we look at family therapy as a discipline, then we will be able to see that much of the work that was done in the years leading up to family therapy is the need for the interventions and interactions in the area for those who many people will say that a lot of their dysfunction in life comes from dysfunctional families. The people we interact with the most in life, that have the most influence over us in many a time and many situations, is our family. So family as a specific discipline is fairly recent, around the 1950s, excuse me, is when we begin to see the separation and specific research done in the area. Extended families became less and less available. Parents looked elsewhere for advice. Um, it's important to understand that when you talk about the country from 1930 to 1950, you talk about the family unit being the most important aspect of someone's life. And before birth control, when we talk about the fact that most families were had a makeup of about 8 to 9 children, between 6 to 8, 8 to 9 children, then your family was, a big part of, your built-in safety and security network. As things progressed to the 50s to 70s, where we look at the two family, the mother and father with two children, a boy and a girl, that's a totally different dynamic than what we had before that. The specific significance of family dynamics is a contributing factor in behavioral and emotional development is not recognized till the mid-1950s. Was greatly influenced by the work of early psychotherapists up to and including Alfred Adler. It's influenced by rapidly changing standards of society. One thing that is often said is what is taboo for one generation is acceptable to the next generation. So this notion of the family unit only being a mother, father, and 4 children or 2 children has even changed from the 50s through the 70s and to today. So what is considered a family unit is no longer the same today in 2013 as it was many years ago. So the other reasons for a need of the therapy is there's a change in the environment, including working mothers, where there are two-parent working households, as well as with a one-parent household, one parent raising children on their own. Things such as marriage, new jobs, new families, taking care of older parents, which is the sandwich generation, where you have the older uh, family members, the middle children, or I'm sorry, the middle, which is the children of the parents, taking care of their own children, and also taking care of their parents. This is also teenage pregnancy, those who are getting starting families at a younger age and requiring services as well as counseling, and then substance abuse. So we're going to look at a lot of these in this class as we go through. Some historical significance here. Lewin and Bowen are two of the first founders that you're going to look at that took earlier work and built upon it. The historical review of family therapy development. Of course, Kurt Lewin looked at organic interactions between the individual and the environment. And more specifically, how an individual interacts with the environment as a result of the parenting they received at home or lack thereof. He found that the interactions of one individual impacted the influence all in one's environment, and this is where we're going to look at that. One good way of describing this is 6 degrees of separation, how one action or activity can influence many others. And you have a network. Everyone who's in this class has a network of family and friends, and oftentimes this can be seen as people who meet and get to know each other or go on and date or go on and become friends, oftentimes you will meet those people through family members or others who are close like family. Bowen in '84 made assumptions about group dynamics that could be easily adapted to family therapy. And more specifically, if you've taken group therapy, if you have not, you'll hear this when you take group therapy. Heterogeneous groups or groups that are different, or homogeneous groups, groups that are the same. When people have a common interest, which a family has a common interest, in the DWI intervention class in the state of Texas, they describe the family's needs and family. There's a family week in that program. And what the description of the family there is the goal of the family is to meet the physical, social, and emotional growth needs of all of the other family members. So when you look back at this, this is some of the foundation that led to these type of works. So the focus is confronting or avoiding conflict. Group members develop dependency on the group leader or dependency on the group, and pairing a group or making a group, pitting a group together that can grow emotionally together, which is really the foundation of what a family is. So if we look back at the history, of course, my favorite theorist of all is Alfred Adler. When I was in the mental health program as a student, I did all of my major core research on Alfred Adler in abnormal psychology as well as in counseling theory. So I'm a big fan of Alfred Adler just because he took the precedence of being counter adverse to Sigmund Freud. So what that means is that even though Sigmund Freud was seen as the founder of modern psychotherapy, building upon the works of Friedrich Nietzsche, as well as other philosophers like Socrates and Plato. When you look at philosophy and sociology and how they were built together and developed into psychotherapy, well, if you look at Alfred Adler, he takes it a step further and realizes that our developments and our stages are not as built upon the subconscious mind as much as it is. And he does agree with some of Freud's belief system on drives and on what motivates us, but he said that our interactions with our environment should also be recognized as an important factor in how we live our lives and how we interact in the world. So the first child guidance clinics formed by Alfred Adler in the 1920s. Though the study of child guidance clinics, researchers theorized that when the family is threatened or disturbed, something must occur to move it towards homeostasis or balance. You're going to hear that a lot in this class. That's a key word to write down in your notes. Might be a child's disruptive behavior or interrupt parent fighting. So what this means is if I have two parents that are fighting and they're disagreeing or having an argument, then if the child acts out, then the focus goes from the two parents to each other to the child. And then concern for a child would serve to unite the parents. In this case, this child's behavior serves to preserve equilibrium of the family. We're going to look at great detail of this because oftentimes when we look at family survival roles later in the semester, we're going to talk about the family, the scapegoat, the mascot, the hero, the chemically dependent, and so on and so forth there, the lost child. When we look at those, it'll help to see where this came from. So these are double bind situations. What this means is that the negativity that comes from this becomes dysfunctional. Basically, you can't have one without the other. So if the child's behavior becomes productive, then the parents will go back to focusing on fighting, and therefore it becomes a vicious cycle. It becomes a vicious cycle in that the family survival roles are in place to maintain this dysfunction. And we're going to talk a lot more about that with Chapter 4 and 5. So the history is the treatment of the chemically dependent. What happened is there was seen as a need. If you ever have a chance, be sure and watch the movie 28 Days with Sandra Bullock, because some of the scenes, and I'll see if I can upload a scene to our Blackboard site, there's a scene where and she had a lot of her underlying reasons was because she was a child of an alcoholic. And so there's a scene where she's in Family Week, and Family Week is when our mother, brother, sister, children come into group and confront the behaviors of the alcoholic or the chemically dependent. And so what happens is that when Sandra Bullock, her character, is sitting in the group, and another parent is being confronted by her children for her neglect of them during her addiction, it triggers something in the character, Gwen. It triggers something in her to be able to relate what's going on with another member. So it's really, it shows some really good ways that family therapy is used. And it's just an overall, generally light-hearted movie that shows what a residential treatment center is like, and what someone's life can be like as they go through the treatment process in the courts. So the family therapy is integrated into substance abuse treatment, Family Week, family education, Al-Anon, Alateen or Al-Anon, or other types of groups for the family members. Prior to the establishment of alcohol treatment, it was felt that alcoholism was a moral issue. If you ever have a chance, also, My Name is Bill W. is the history of AA. By the time one was placed into treatment, the person's addiction or alcoholism was so advanced there was generally no intact family left. So as we begin to move from sanatoriums and other types of hospitalization and begin to do outpatient and also just general residential treatment, then you see the need to integrate the family in order to move the family back to a place of functioning. So later alcoholism treatment became chemically dependent treatment because there's no of the research on addiction. And with the DSM-5 this year, you're going to see, instead of us talking about alcoholism versus chemically dependent versus substance abuser, you're going to see substance use disorder as the bottom line, the foundation, any type of substance, alcohol included, substance use disorder, and then you'll see varying levels of increased dependency versus lower levels of abuse, but it's all going to be under one category instead of the separate two, which is the way it was up until the 1980s. So we're going back to substance use disorder and then varying levels of degree. So you'll see that as it begins to be launched into the field this next year. With the focus on treatment, the affected individual and the cessation of drinking. Later it became apparent that the affected individual was not getting better because the family could not adapt, which this is what we call arrested development. There's a TV show that's very famous that's by Ron Howard that is named after that, Arrested Development. And then family members left to face major changes alone in order to escape the chemically dependent. So although most family of origin work should wait till later in recovery, many issues related to possible recovery failures should be dealt with early on. Especially when we're talking, and let me give you an example of this. An example of this would be the wife of someone who has a drinking problem, who at 3 a.m. on Friday night goes driving up and down a road to see if her husband is asleep in his vehicle, takes the kids with her, goes, gets the husband, leaves the vehicle there, brings the husband home, gets the husband in bed Friday night, Saturday morning, drives the husband to get the vehicle, bring the vehicle home, and then does it all over again Saturday night. And this becomes the usual routine, the ritual. This is how Fridays and Saturdays are every week. So if the chemically dependent becomes sober, then there's going to be a change in this ritual, and the family ritual is now going to be sit at home in the living room and staring at each other, or arguing or fighting, or whatever it is. And so the family has to be taught to have positive interactions, communication, and new family rituals to replace the old ones, with which most of the rituals in the chemically dependent family surround the chemically dependent. Gradually, treatment professionals began to focus on significance of interplay among family members, and this contributed to or perpetuated family dysfunction. In other words, what are the things that were dysfunctional? Al-Anon and AA family members were refused to get involved. Family members unable to grasp the family's problem entailed more than the drinking, and hung on to the myth that if drinking stopped, the problems would disappear. Well, we teach in substance abuse counseling that the tenet that if you stop drinking, that's when your problems will really begin, because it is a mythos that once you stop drinking, your problems go away. Well, no, that's when you really get to start dealing with your problems. And that's something that is taught not just to the addict, but also to the family members, because the family members are there to soften or to cushion the blow of daily life with those who are chemically dependent that don't have coping skills to deal with daily life. And we'll talk a little more about the different types of situations that can occur. Until development of family therapy in the mid-50s, alcohol counselors did most of alcohol therapy. Family focus was always based on how the family affected the alcoholic's drinking. Family therapy professionals focused on the communication and interaction patterns among the whole family. And this is what was looked at: how wives affected the husbands negatively, that most women married alcoholics to take out their own needs. And then also focus still on responsibility of wives for addicted persons' use. A sociologist stated that wives sabotaged the husband's new sobriety because they could not give up their own roles, because they could not trust the husband to take over. And that's what we looked at with the different examples that I've given so far in this lecture. Some other research in your book by Whalen on 1953, page 8, chapter 1. There's 4 types of wives of alcoholic. Okay, no, and this is what they suggested: that husbands' continued drinking was supported or maintained by wives' neurotic needs, maintaining the crisis mode. In other words, maintaining that I have to be there for and to take care of the alcoholic. The 4 types were very negative stereotypes, and we're going to look at those in further detail in a future chapter when we actually go over chapter 8. That is on page 8 in chapter 1, where it lists the 4 different types. I do not have my book here with me to look those up right now, but definitely you want to look at the way that it lists those there. And also until 1960s and 70s, clinicians ignored substance abuse. Keep in mind that. Here's the history of interactions or interventions in society. In the pre-1900 America, there was 2 people who dealt with medical or psychological problems. It was your pastor or clergy and the MD or doctor or psychiatrist. Through the 1900s, with psychotherapy, MDs, psychiatrists splitting off, and then the formation of the social work field through the 30s and 50s, and then from social workers came family therapists, and then now we have professional counselors, and then with the formation of AA, 50s, 60s, and 70s, AA, where social workers or even psychiatrists didn't deal as much with just pure chemical dependency counseling, and then came the formation of the chemical dependency field as its own discipline, separate to the others. What you're going to find, and what I'm seeing a lot of in current thinking, is more of an integration of the chemical dependency as a extra certification or licensure to go along with the master level clinicians. I don't see any insurance companies billing for an associate's level clinician. However, and that's an article that came out in the Addiction Professional recently. And the article stated that it was a de facto, which means even though you're licensed and you should be able to bill, that most insurance companies would be at a point in time where they would not. And the Addiction Professional is a great tool for you to have. And if you join the, where's my camera? I'm trying to see my camera here. Make sure you can see this. If you join the TAP, which is also the Texas Addiction Professional Association of Addiction Professional, as well as which causes you to be a member of NADAC, then you will get a free subscription to the Addiction Professional, and that's where I find a lot of my useful information about waves of change in the field. Okay, so Ewing and Fox in the 60s and 70s first suggested alcoholism was a family disorder, focused on changing members' interactions, maintained that alcohol abuse maintained family homeostasis. And then Steinglass, Davis, and Berenson, which you'll see some videos by Steinglass from 75. You'll see some YouTube videos in this class on her theories. Alcoholics might be highly adaptive for the family. And then finally, families who experienced fighting, depression, and emotional distancing among the members did better as a family when the alcoholic was present and actively drinking. The family had learned to find its the family identified with who it was more so by the alcoholic's behaviors than with the absence of the alcoholic. Not enough treatment programs that can provide the necessary family treatment. Stigma of addiction and family involvement keeps family from becoming addicted or involved, keeps family from being involved. And with addiction, the interventions that you see on A&E, you see where family members just really don't know what to do or how to handle oftentimes the more severe addictions like heroin or severe alcoholism. Traditional thinking by the family that if drinking stops, the family problems will also stop, thus placing the blame on the user, and therefore when the user stops and the family problems are still there, they still are at a place of not being able to change or to cope with the issues. This ends our first lecture in this class, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next lecture.